Hey, what's going on, everyone? Today, we're going to be talking about recruiting and how to recruit volunteers. This is one of the most intimidating things we can do in ministry because it is intimidating to go out and ask someone to take their time away to volunteer. And we have Joe here. He's been doing this for years. And so I want to ask you, how do you get over the initial fear of asking someone to volunteer?
Yeah, I've been doing ministry for a while now, and I initially was very intimidated by it. There's the fear of what if people say no, or who am I to ask them to take time out of their schedule to help me? But I had a shift in the way that I thought about this. I really had to understand things differently. Rather than thinking that I'm asking people to join me in what I'm doing, really what I'm doing is I'm asking them to get involved with what God is doing. And it's really an opportunity to connect people to the purpose that God has designed for them. So Ephesians talks about how we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which he prepared in advance for us to do. So if I look at every person as a uniquely designed person that God designed for a specific purpose, and there are good works that he's prepared in advance for them to do, and I approach it from I'm giving people the opportunity to do what God has called them to do. It takes it away from me asking them for a personal favor, and it's an opportunity for me to just connect people to what God has for them.
So you're releasing purpose in
Absolutely.
people's lives.
Absolutely.
That's great. What does this look like? Let's get really practical. How do you make a great ask when you're asking someone to volunteer?
Yeah, I think there's three main steps that I think that you have to go through to make an effective ask. The first thing is to just make it personal. I think you want to identify something that a person has that makes them qualified to be able to do a particular job. So see something that they do, a skill that they have, or a talent that they have that makes them qualified for what you're asking them to do.
Can you give an example of that, how to make it personal?
Sure. So I think one of the biggest areas of a lot of churches that we have to staff with volunteers is the welcome ministry. You need a lot of greeters and friendly faces. So something that I might say to them is, hey, Sean, you really have a unique ability to make people feel comfortable and welcome in a new environment. Not everyone can do that. And when I say that, I'm identifying some skills that you have, some talents and abilities that would directly link to being on the welcome team, and I'm affirming you as a person at the same time.
That's great. So what's the second step?
Second step is sharing the vision. There's really two ways to share the vision. You can either share the vision for the ministry, or you can actually share the vision for a particular person. So let me start by talking about sharing the vision for a ministry. All that is, it's talking about why the ministry is important and what you and your team do to accomplish that vision.
What does that look like? Can you give an example?
Sure. So we were talking about a welcome ministry. Something you might say to a person that you're getting involved with the welcome team is, hey, you may not have realized this, but a lot of people, when they come to a church for the first time, they decide whether or not they're going to come back in the first 5 minutes. We as a welcome team, we want to create 3 good interactions or conversations with every guest that walks through our doors. So what I did there was I first of all created the need of there are people that are not going to come back to the church if they don't feel welcome, and then I explained what we're trying to do as a welcome team.
Can you share that second vision? You're giving vision to the person.
Sure. Yeah. So sometimes when you're asking somebody to get involved, they may not be interested in the vision of your ministry. People are usually just naturally inward focused. So when you try to bring them outside and looking at other people, they don't always respond. And one of the primary reasons that people don't get involved in ministry is that they don't feel like they're qualified or that they have something to offer. So if I talk to somebody specifically about them rather than the ministry, it really opens them up. So I think if you can pull that out of people and share vision for them, it allows them to be open to what you're suggesting.
That's awesome. Can you give an example of how you would share the vision for that person?
Sure. So I've been involved in children's ministry for a long time. Maybe if there was a dad coming in and dropping his kids off, I can say to him, hey, I really enjoy how you make it a fun experience when you're dropping your kids off for church, and you really are committed to being here on a regular basis. A lot of the boys that we have coming here to the church, they don't have a godly role model. I see that you are modeling what it means to follow Jesus for your kids, and that's awesome. Many of our boys don't have that. And I think that you would really be a great leader in our children's ministry. You would be able to set a good example for some of our boys. You have some skills that a lot of people don't have, and you could make a really big difference in a lot of these boys that need a male role model in their lives.
I love that, sharing the vision just for the ministry and then for that person. That's great. What's the third step?
The third step is simply making a clear ask. So sometimes we can get caught up in doing something that doesn't really get the response that we want. But if we can make that clear ask and a request of people to get involved, it's a lot more effective. But if we miss that step, we usually aren't going to get people to commit.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of what a clear request would look like and an unclear request?
Sure.
How
So
they differ?
sometimes we think if we say something like, Sean, I would love for you to be involved in my ministry, that's enough. But the reality is I never actually made a request of you. I never asked you a question. I made a statement. I would love for you to get involved in my ministry, but simply adding a question to that requires a yes or no answer is important. So I might still want to say the same thing. So I could say, Sean, I would love for you to get involved in my ministry. Would you consider joining the welcome team? And when I say it that way, I ask a question that you have to respond with a yes or no answer, and it brings people to the point of a decision. I think that's just a key thing to actually make the ask to get them involved.
Okay. How can you put together all three of these steps and make it into like a quick conversation, a quick request?
Sure. So let's look at the welcome team. If I was having an interaction with you, I could say, hey, Sean, you have a unique ability to make people feel comfortable and welcome in a new environment. We on the welcome team, we have a goal to really make people feel connected here. A lot of people don't realize this, but guests coming into a church, they make a decision to come back within the first 5 minutes that they're there. We on the welcome team, we want to create 3 positive interactions and conversations with every guest that walks through our doors. You have a lot of skills in this area. I think that you would do great on the welcome team. I'd love to have you. Would you consider joining our team?
1, 2, 3, just like that.
Just like that.
That's
just
great.
like that.
So I'm sure there's a lot of ministry leaders watching, and they're thinking, okay, during the week, I have to do a lot of administrative tasks, and I'm preparing for the weekend. And then when the weekend gets here, I'm executing, whatever needs done in my ministry. Where can I find the time to actually go out and recruit people?
Yeah, I think sometimes we can get caught into the mindset of we don't have enough time to do this, but this doesn't take a lot of time. The biggest barrier is not our time. Sometimes it's just our fear of having these conversations. As you saw, the conversation that I had, the one that I just modeled, it maybe took 30 seconds. It doesn't take a lot of time, and I don't even have to go out of my way to have that conversation. I can have that conversation as I'm interacting with somebody as they're walking into church. The key is just to develop a list of people that you really want to target, that you want to get involved in your ministry, and then when you see them, just have that quick conversation. It doesn't take a lot of time, but the big thing is overcoming your fear to actually have that conversation.
That's good. So what would you say, how can you make it personal, a request personal, but you don't know the person? You're not going to know everyone in the church.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think it doesn't have to be that complicated. Even using the examples that I mentioned earlier, the first one being, hey, Sean, you have a really unique ability to make people feel welcome. I can come to that conclusion very quickly. I could come to that conclusion in the first 5 minutes that I know you. I don't have to know you for years to figure that out. If you walk up to people and you smile, you're excited to see them, and you greet them, you've already shown the skills needed to be on the welcome team. I don't have to know a lot of your family history or anything like that. I just saw that in the first time that I met you. Or even the other example of the dad that's coming in and just kind of being really fun with his kids. I can notice that very quickly and know that he has some skills. I could watch that within a few minutes and say, man, you're really good with kids. So coming to those conclusions, the key is just always having your eyes open for certain skills that people have and how they would fit in your ministry.
So it's just about being intentional and then making the most of every opportunity.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Absolutely.
So what would you say after you make a request and someone responds, you go through all those three points, and someone responds, I'm too busy, I can't fit that in my schedule. What would you say to that person?
Sure, and that does happen a lot. I think the key is in step number 2. Because when somebody's saying, I don't have time, they've already made a decision that this isn't for them. Quite honestly, I don't think the reason that people don't get involved is about their time. I think it's about what they value. And if somebody doesn't value what you're presenting, they're going to put other things ahead of that. They don't have time because they're prioritizing other things. I think that if we can do a good job of sharing the vision, and one of the most effective ways to do it is share the vision about a person. What you do is you create a desire for those people to fulfill the purpose that God has on their lives. This isn't about asking people to do tasks. This is about releasing people to do the things that God has designed them to do. And if I can have a conversation with you and say, Sean, these are some unique skills that you have, and God has made you this way for a reason, and He can use you to do some great things. And I would love for you to be able to use those skills to impact people's lives by joining this team. When people hear that, they're energized. They're not thinking, how do I add this to my schedule? I'm just too busy. They're thinking, man, how do I make this happen? Because I know that God has called me and I feel affirmed to do this. And they're ready to figure out a way to make it work. And the barrier is not people's time. The barrier is people not believing that they have something to offer. The barrier is them being insecure or afraid that they're not going to live up to the expectations. So speaking that life and that vision into them many times will really just cause them to value what you're saying and want to get involved.
That's great. So you can actually do ministry while recruiting for ministry.
Absolutely. This doesn't have to be something that's entirely separate, or you don't have to block off hours of your time to recruit. You just keep your eyes open and look for people and have conversations.
That's great. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I guess the next step for everyone would be just try those 3 steps. Go out and make that request and keep going.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.